Hello internet friends, welcome back to my channel. My name is Lindsay, LiJo. Welcome. Today we're going to be talking about one of my personal favorite subjects, and that is processing, but really just marination. And today we're not going to be talking about marinating vegetables or anything of the like. We're going to be talking about marinating ideas. Delicious. So let's get right into this video. So a word that I use a lot to the dismay of sometimes the people around me is the word marination. It's just a great word that really encompasses a lot of what goes on in my brain. I do it quite often. And what I use marination for is to make confident decisions. Okay, so how does marination work? Imagine for a moment that you are a software engineer and you are writing a piece of code that has the purpose to do some specific thing. You write the code to the best of your knowledge, but then you need to run it to check for errors. When you encounter these errors, you have to go back, figure out what went wrong, write some new code so that you can fix that problem, hopefully, and then rerun the code again to once again check for errors. You will continue this process over and over again until eventually it produces the results that you want. Now take that concept and apply it to any decision that you have to make, especially any significant decision. That, my friends, is what I like to call marinating. And that's why I consider myself a fairly confident decision maker. It's because I run these simulations over and over again until, in my head, they pass. I mean, that's what marinating is. It's breaking down all the little proteins, all the little pieces that could go wrong, all the things that maybe are not the way they should be, until it distills into this perfect, beautiful, delicious entity of a concept. I'm hungry. Is anyone else hungry for some brain food? Yes. So my preference is, of course, that I have the time to do this marination process so that I can walk into a decision confidently the way that I like to. I've run the simulation over and over again. Everything is good. And this is why I particularly loathe having to fire off decisions on someone else's timeline other than my own. And then when you're forced to fire out that decision that could very well have an error in it because for whatever reason you have to do it, it's just very uncomfortable. So what about you? How confident do you feel in your decision-making ability? Maybe you're someone who runs into decisions with only a little bit of marinating, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't, and that's okay for you. Or maybe you're someone who gets stuck in decision paralysis, where you see all these options and all these possibilities and you're not really sure which one is the right one, and then you kind of don't end up making a decision on anything because you get stuck with all of the possibilities. Or perhaps you're someone who has trouble really visualizing what they want in the future, and therefore you just kind of avoid the simulation altogether, so you're not kind of stuck in that uncomfortable place that some of us weirdos like to be, in that very uncomfortable place of simulation land. So all that being said, I'm going to give you 5 tips to marinate better, to make decisions in a way that you feel a little bit more confident. And you should be able to substitute anything pretty much in this list and be able to kind of run the same decision-making process through it, run the simulation. So first you define your endpoint, you ask yourself what you want to do. Maybe it's developing an application. And since I'm more confident with technology, we're going to talk about the application kind of through these steps. And next you ask yourself, is it actually worth doing? So this is where you qualify this idea. You really run through, okay, based on the amount of money this will take, based off the amount of time it will take, based off the amount of energy it will take, whatever. You want to run that simulation because, maybe one of those factors is going to actually make this whole thing in your head fail, and you're going to have to go back a step and actually, figure out this whole process again. Maybe you'll have to go back and define your endpoint slightly differently so that you don't end up with the same error. Is it worth doing is really a place where you get to marinate through the sacrifice that's involved in some sort of decision and say, do I really want to sacrifice these things in order to achieve this endpoint? Again, back to the application. Do I want to spend hundreds of hours, either developing this application myself or give it to someone for them to develop? I'll have to pay them money. How much money will I have to pay them? How much time will I have to take personally to define my idea so that I can actually hand it over for them to develop it? How much energy is it going to take in marketing? How long will this process last? When do I expect it to end? Is it ever going to end? Is it ever going to end? No, it's never going to end. Third, you want to define what is the actual reason. Specify the purpose of this endpoint. Is it to help people solve a problem that they were currently unable to solve in an efficient way? Is the purpose to make you money and give you a stable financial future? Is it because you want to push your boundaries to do something you thought you were never before capable of, and now you're going to push yourself through this very uncomfortable process of doing something for the sake of your own growth? Define your reasons. And again, you may hit an error here. You may say that I want to be financially successful based off of this thing, but then go back and say, well, actually, it was going to cost me this much money to even get it started. So will it even produce something that is financially successful? Right? There's an error that you might have to go back and solve. And then fourth here, what does it ideally look like? This is where we get to attach a little bit of real life sensory to this decision-making process. This is where you want to begin the simulation of roughly describing the elements of whatever this thing is as if it were kind of sitting in front of you. What are the important features that should comprise it in order to support its purpose? And this is where you look at things like, oh, I've thought through all these parts, but wait, there's no area here where transactions were going to go through, and that was one of the things I wanted, that was one of the reasons I had on here. So now I have to go back and figure out, okay, well, what would that transaction area look like, and so forth. Constantly rerunning, checking for errors. And then the last thing here you want to do is propose a solution. So let's say you run all of this and all of it checks out, right? You've gone through, everything's passed, and you basically have all the framework laid out. Well, the next thing is really to figure out, okay, well, what's the best decision now to action this? And then you action that decision in your brain through the simulation again, and make sure that it would work with everything you currently have. And then the last part there is basically just to then action the actual decision. Your code is passed, you may go and perform the action. And as you're running these simulations, and as things inevitably fail and you go back and you try to rework things, those failures to me are just additional points of data to help you reduce down further this concept that you can then move forward with. So the failures, the errors are really a good process in the marination, the distillation of the actual idea. And also sometimes you'll go through this process and you'll say, do you know what? This decision is a fail. It's not going to work. That's a great thing to do on the front end, because that means you don't have to deal with the frustration and the time and the energy that it will outtake from you than to actually have to do it in reality and then figure that out. It's a lot of work. A lot of work to figure out something's not going to work, So process it on the front end, marinate on the front end. This is easy for me to talk about because I'm talking about my savior functions here as an INTJ. So that's it for this video. If you guys enjoyed it, great. If you didn't, all right. And I will see you in my next video. If you would like to book time with me on the video chats, you can book my link through Snug below. I'll see you next time. Until then, continue to marinate, my friends. Marinate. Long, strong. Reduce those flavors. Break down those proteins. I'm just going to make this INTJ cringy exit as uncomfortable for you as possible, so marinate on it.